Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I am your host, Justin Dixon, and today we've got Bart Davis on the podcast. He is the co-founder and CEO of 512 Financial. They are an Austin-based financial services firm that recently, over the last 12 months, have done 2 acquisitions. So they not only can help you with your accounting and finance work, they also now have an HR services and a recruitment firm as part of their offering. So pretty interesting episode because we talk a lot about how the acquisitions have gone over the last 12 months, some lessons learned as a new kind of CEO, and kind of what things he wished he would have known kind of before the acquisitions, and some of the things that he actually noticed kind of post-acquisition that maybe he wasn't fully aware of. So if you're learning and trying to do some acquisitions within your own business, I think you'll get a lot out of this episode. So let's get Bart on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. All right, Bart, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being a guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Justin.
Awesome. Well, let's get right into it. Give everybody that's watching and listening a little bit of an overview of who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. So 512 Financial is a 4-year-old fractional services firm. We do accounting, finance, people, talent, HR, all of that on a fractional basis, meaning, effectively meaning part-time. But our folks are salaried W-2 employees here at 512 Financial, and they spend, 5, 10, 20 hours a week on a couple of clients. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Got it. So it's been around for 4 years, I guess. Did you start it? Did you buy it? Like, what's the origin story of 512?
Yes, so I started it with my co-founder, Joel Trammell, 4 years ago, like I mentioned. For the 7 years prior to that, I had been doing fractional controller and CFO work for portfolio companies of Joel. And so we started that in 2014 with 2 software companies, Packet Design and iGraphics. Packet Design was acquired in 2018 by Sienna, a publicly traded company up in Hanover, Maryland. And then in 2021, iGraphics was acquired by Banneker Partners. And that was sort of the impetus to take what at the time was a 4-person team with basically 4 clients and spin it into 512 Financial and sort of take it to market.
Got it. So you're almost doing it kind of stealthy in the beginning, and then you kind of put a brand on it and decided to launch. I guess, how did you pick the name? Obviously, you're here in Austin, Texas, where I am, and all that fun stuff. So I'm guessing that's part of the name. But how did you land on 512 Financial?
Yeah, well, it turns out accountants are not the most creative folks. And so we kicked some names around. But yeah, so 512 is the Austin area code. We did that because we are, we're super proud to be here in Austin. We think it's a fantastic, growth and entrepreneurial landscape. But obviously, to many folks outside of Austin, 512 is just a number. We're often called 512, which irks us very slightly. But yeah, it's intentional that it's just a number, right? Lots of companies have nothing to do with the name has nothing to do with their actual service, and so we can work with folks all over the country. But people here in Austin do tend to appreciate that that we are a local firm.
Yeah, Austin is definitely a big, small town, and they love to do work with locals. Even though more and more people are not locals anymore, there are very few people that I've met in the 5 years that I've been here that are born and raised in Austin. Usually, people are like, "Oh yeah, I came in 2019 or 18 or whatever the case is, or last year." And so, yeah, it's always good to do work with local Austinites, if you will. I think that's
right.
What we're called.
Yes.
So it's been 4 years. So I guess you mentioned that kind of it started out as kind of spinning up and kind of officially branding into an actual like outsourced accounting and financial advisory shop, and then now you've got talent and HR. So what's been the growth or kind of the expansion over the last 4 years?
The first three, it's been pretty fast throughout, which I feel very grateful to be able to say. The first 3 years was, fully organic growth. We, despite not branding and kind of, to your point, being in stealth, we were known a little bit because we were, presenting in board meetings to our couple of existing clients every quarter. And so we had some exposure to some of the local investors and kind of tech scene. And so when we formally launched the company, and I went and started calling folks like Live Oak and Silverton and Next Coast, some of them already knew us, mostly because of Joel, really, my co-founder. Yep. And others had seen us or seen me specifically, maybe in quarterly board meetings for a while. And so we got out of the gates really hot. I mean, we kind of went from the 4 sort of legacy clients that I referenced to 10 kind of in a week of phone calls, and really just, did our best to keep that momentum while also, of course, keeping the quality of the product and of the service, which I think is always a challenge when you're growing quickly in a services business. And yeah, so it was all, like I mentioned, all organic the first 3 years. And then here in 2025, we have done 2 acquisitions to sort of, really spread out what we can do beyond the core accounting, finance, and HR services that we had done for the first 3 years. And so January was Austin PeopleWorks, which was a comparable offering set to what we did, but a slightly bigger team size. That roughly doubled the size of our HR services team. And then in August, we acquired HireBetter, and that was really a very different, very different from any services that we had up until that point. It's executive search. They're typically working with larger companies than we are for the most part, or than we had been, I should say. And it just sort of elongated, the customer lifecycle, because we do have a tendency to scale with companies up to and through the point where fractional doesn't make sense for them anymore. And so having the ability to go, yeah, we agree, you do need a full-time CFO, controller, HR director, whatever it might be, and let us help you place that, was a really attractive value proposition, and ultimately what led us to that decision.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the acquisitions, I'm curious about a couple of things. I guess, it sounds like you work a lot with kind of the startup-y small business community. I guess what is your typical or ideal, client, and maybe size-wise or industry-wise that you would, love to work with?
Yeah, I think we typically would say that it's anywhere from like 20 to 200 people. And that typically equates to, low single digit millions in revenue up through 25, 30. We have gone smaller, we have gone bigger. But, generally, if it's a true startup, they probably are not quite able to fit us into the budget just yet. And if they're north of that, 200 folks or 25 million or whatever it might be, it's probably time for that function to be brought in-house full time. And then as far as industry, we do have a concentration in software and tech and life sciences. That is more a function of who knows us than what we're good at. At this point in time, having hired from, folks of all walks of life, I don't think we're more equipped to handle SaaS than we are other things, but that is still probably, 60-65% of our client base.
And yeah, I mean, obviously, and that's a not terrible focus to being in Austin, because there's a ton of SaaS here locally. So that's
yes,
probably a good thing, but also probably just based on your geography, kind of how it shook out here.
That's right.
When it comes to kind of like the organic growth side, before the acquisitions, you obviously started out, with yourself and maybe a few people. How big was the firm before you started making some of those acquisitions?
So I think by the end of 24, we were around 35 people. Yeah, that's about right. Because there was, we added about 7 with each acquisition, and we're sitting right around 50 or maybe just over 50 today. We have had some, just some hires as well. But yeah, so I think we were right about 35 at the end of 24. And yeah.
And how does it, I'm always curious about founders and, going from being kind of providing a service to then building a business that provides a service. And you are not necessarily going to be the responsible for execution of said service, being a fractional controller or a fractional CFO. You're going to be hiring people that are going to be providing a service. And obviously, while it's not your name on the wall, it is your name because you helped start the business and everything like that. So how did that transition go from being, oh yeah, I can be your fractional CFO, to really selling 512 Financial to the to your customers or potential customers, and then having somebody else that you've hired and trained provide that service?
I think I'm still learning, honestly, about making that transition. I think there are parts of it that I've done well with, and parts of it that I still need to do better. Having someone like Joel as a co-founder is a pretty immense competitive advantage, I would say, versus others like me who may have endeavored out to do something similar, because he has scaled companies several times over. He has literally written a book about how to be a CEO. He has kind of his own sort of management philosophy, and when sort of managerial structures break down from a headcount perspective. And so I think he's kind of had me, looking around the corner in ways that I would not have done by myself. But yeah, it's a big transition, and I've stubbed my toe more than once on the way, and I'm certainly not done doing that just yet. But yeah, again, having sort of that mentorship and someone who's done this. He's scaled several companies from a couple people to a couple hundred people, and
Wow.
so that's an incredible asset.
Yeah, having that shoulder to learn from, and obviously he's probably helping you avoid potholes or not running into hurdles that you may have done if you were kind of building it on your own. I want to learn a little bit about kind of the acquisition process, because a lot of times we get startup founders on here that are tech, and they're always raising money and trying to buy businesses and all that fun stuff. I guess I'm curious, kind of from a services perspective, looking at you were kind of supplying the outsourced accounting and finance function for these small companies, and now, to your point, you mentioned that your companies will tend to outgrow you if they are successful, right? And that's
Yeah.
not necessarily a bad thing, but now you have this acquisition of higher better, and now you can say to that client, cool, yeah, we can be your fractional CFO. And then when you can get to the point where you're ready to graduate and hire a full-time CFO, we can help hire that person, because we know where all the bodies are buried, we know all the numbers, right? And then we can have an even more seamless transition from fractional to full-time, because obviously you've helped them find, hire, and then obviously you've been doing the book. So talk about those strategic acquisitions as you think about kind of 2026 and beyond, of how you can be a more holistic support to your customers, both current and future customers.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly right. Ultimately, there's lots of reasons, but fundamentally the reason for both of them in slightly different realms was exactly what you said, being a more holistic outfit for scaling companies. Because when we're pretty used to and are probably guilty of it, going to 6 different vendors for this type of thing, or maybe it's 6 different softwares, or right, whatever. There's kind of the same, like, software companies love to buy software. I think services companies love to find, or try to find, kind of like the perfect partner for a specific set of skills and services. But they're all frustrated by it, the one neck to choke. I hate that saying, but it is like, if all of your problems you can come talk to me, versus you have to talk to 6 different people about these various things, like that, just there's just kind of a streamlining that occurs there. And so fundamentally that was the reason. And what will continue, we've talked about the concept of acquiring a tax practice, or additional kind of like systems expertise for implementations and things of that nature. because it is, the more that folks can go, oh, 512 does that, the better. And so, yeah, we feel we're early-ish in the Austin People Works, about 10, 11 months, and we're very early still with Hire Better, but we do feel like you sort of accomplished that goal of being, maybe not go to for everything, but that we can really do quite a bit of things across kind of a company's G&A function.
Yeah. I I say it all the time when I talk to clients, given that I have a recruitment firm and we are, more or less generalists. I do like the term one throat to choke, because a lot of times I work with startups and small businesses, and they need help with a bunch of different functions within their business. And, when you work with a CEO and you can tell them, yep, I can help you with accounting or finance and sales and marketing. And they're like, okay, cool. So you're my guy or my team that I can just go to and say, yep, you go find me what I need. And similar to you, it's like, yep, we're already doing the books, so why don't we help you hire other people? Or, hey, you need to bring in some HR expertise, et cetera. It does allow you to be a little bit more sticky with your customers, because if you're, theoretically, if you're doing well for them in one area, you should be able to support them in another, especially as you're trying to integrate these companies. And that's actually one thing I wanted to ask you about, was the integration process. And I know that you're early-ish on the Hire Better, but you've had almost 10 months on the other one. How has that integration process been from a culture and people and systems perspective? Because a lot of times, the ultimate success of an acquisition is really down to the initial integration, and that includes people and technology.
Yeah, it doesn't just include people. I would say that is the number one kind of concern. And we did, I think, in both cases, a good bit of homework on that component pre-acquisition. But yeah, I mean, it was an immense effort and worth every minute, hour spent. But to figure out, like, do our work styles work? Do our approaches to how we treat the customer, is that going to jive? Just this is a remote first workplace. But both of these businesses that we acquired were Austin headquartered, but I think had 0 FTEs in Austin across the two.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, Austin People Works, the owner, Lori Howell, was here in Austin, but everyone else was out of town. And same for Hire Better, the owner, Kurt Wilkin, was here in Austin, and everyone else was out of town. So that's fine. Most of the firm previously was in Austin, but worked, in a Zoom window every day. So, something that we did that I think is not common, probably, at least in the M&A work that we do, it's not common, is that I had the opportunity to talk to every employee, weeks before we closed the transaction about, hey, you will be receiving an offer letter. It's going to be contingent on actually reaching the finish line, because lots of things can screw up deals and there's no guarantee. But assuming we get to the finish line, you will be an employee of 512, so that there wasn't any of that, like, what happens to me? Because that's what goes through everybody's mind. Even if you're an absolute rock star in your business, if the acquiring business is fundamentally different or has a different approach or metrics or whatever, then you may find yourself looking for a new role. And so I wanted everyone to have all the comfort that was not going to be a concern. So I'm sure they would still be thinking, what's going to happen with my customers, or what's going to happen, to my office equipment or whatever. But at least they didn't have to think, do I have a job? So
right.
That we did, like I said, kind of several weeks before closing in both cases. And then just getting them, access to either me or whoever their kind of service line leader or direct manager would be, if it was going to change. Just, again, to get them familiar with, like, all right, like, there's so much, like, mystery around M&A, I feel like, but it is ultimately just people. And so if you get them feeling comfortable, or as comfortable as possible with, yeah, okay, I know Bart, he's not the worst. Then you're gonna be able to do your job better when that deal does close. And so I'm not saying that we did it all perfectly, because we definitely did hit some bumps with IT transitions and things like that. But what we definitely did do was make everyone know that there was a place for them. We were excited about having them. They were a big reason why we were doing the acquisition, and just very intentional once the deal was closed as well, of onboarding meetings and just getting them acclimated.
Yeah, I mean, when you're acquiring services businesses, you're really acquiring the talent, right? Because
Yeah.
contracts with, especially in the recruitment world, yes, you can have a contract with a company, but if they're not hiring, it's really not really a contract. It's just a piece of paper that says, yes, I'll use you, and these are our predetermined rates. And so you've got to bet on the people in the business that are going to be able to, yep, we did X number of revenue last year, and we're on track to do this year. And so you're hoping that by integrating all these services businesses together, 1 + 1 = 10 in this scenario. I'm kind of curious a little bit about the remote first kind of integration, because historically, if you did a deal, you maybe would go meet people in person and have kind of an all hands roundtable kind of thing. How was it kind of trying to integrate now 3 cultures? Because you had your original 512, you had the HR consulting firm, and now you've got Hire Better. I guess, how did the integration of those 3, and maybe was it different or similar trying to do Austin People Works versus doing Hire Better from a culture integration perspective?
It was similar, fortunately, and to your point, I think if either of those entities were accustomed to the in-person all hands, or they were in an office, whether it be in Austin or somewhere else, I think that would be harder. Just what we've all been used to doing for the last handful of years. In both entities and in 512, this is a mature workforce. These are seasoned professionals who have been around the block, and in some cases have been through M&A before. And not across the board, but in some cases, and so yeah, I don't think that the remote first nature made it any more challenging. And again, I think if a specific entity was used to the opposite, that probably would have been tough, because it just, they might feel like they aren't able to get to know me or people in general without that. But as is, we do quarterly all hands, but virtually, of course, as it is. And I send a monthly video of, here's what happened in the business, and my virtual door is always open. And I do get a lot of, direct questions that way. And so I think we've had good success. I mean, again, the Awesome People Works being a little bit older, it's easier to say this. So we're 10 or 11 months in, and we have not lost a person from, that came over in January. And there's a lot of clients. And so maybe there's been 1 or 2, but we certainly haven't lost any material clients, and I'm not aware of losing any. So
yeah,
I feel confident in saying that one, again, not that we did everything perfect, but that it has gone well, and that the efforts were well received. And, hopefully 9 months from now, I can say the same thing about it.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. It is probably easier to integrate in a remote first. If everybody's remote first, it's probably easier to integrate than, to your point, having like, oh, well, 512 is all in an office. And so they're still, doing that culture, or, Hire Better is all out in, a certain part of the country or whatever. And so it would be very difficult. And now everybody's almost on an equal playing field when it comes to, having access to you or, other people in the organization.
Well, and we're also client focused also, that, it's like probably more people at 512 Financial spend time in a client's office than they do in our office. And so, and again, I don't know if with APW or Hire Better that reality was the case, but in both in either case, folks were not relying on FaceTime with employees to get to know each other.
Got it. So I kind of want to pivot a little bit to AI. Everybody's, we're all talking about it. Everybody's implementing it. So being in the kind of accounting and finance world, like, I'm curious how you at 512 Financial, and this can be across all of the businesses, but I'm curious, how are you leveraging it internally? And then are you spinning up any type of service offering for your clients to say, hey, we are, an AI forward company, and we use these different tools, and it makes us either be more efficient in our fractional services or less costly or anything like that? I'm just kind of curious to kind of open up the AI can of worms, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, I mean, we're both familiar with Jeff Woods,
Yeah.
and so I'm in the his AI collective, and that has led to my answer on how are we using it today, which is primarily as a thought partner. We do not, for the moment, leverage it a ton from a deliverables perspective. But there is a lot of, again, there's a lot of using it as a thought partner. There's a lot of using it to kind of get your own thoughts out of your head, and document it, and things of that nature. Um, and then simultaneously, we're perpetually evaluating all of the new shiny AI tools that have the potential to change the way that they will change the way we do business. It's just a matter of when. And so we're not naive to that. We're not saying like, oh, there's no AI in accounting or HR or talent, right? That would be silly. There was actually an example this morning in our leadership channel of the latest AI agentic AI kind of bookkeeper that raised $40 million today, and you're like, oh, how should we be thinking about this? And it's no different from the other 14 of them that have popped up recently, which is, let's figure out if and when it can do what it says it can do, and then let's look at partnering with it. Because I am not equipped to go build an AI platform. I'm not trying to raise the money to do that. We're a services company. But again, I mean, to just ignore that whole movement would effectively be signing up for the company to die in the relatively near future.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's so interesting that we are kind of in the .com boom of AI, right? Every company that has AI either in their name or in their product is raising money and seemingly, kind of bringing new things to light. And obviously in the recruitment world, I've been in this, world 20 years, and ever since I started in it, especially when LinkedIn became even, not as big as it obviously is now, but it kind of started on the scene in 06 and 08. Like every year it's like, oh, recruiters are going to go away, recruiters are going to die, recruiters are going to die. And we're still here. I do think that AI is going to have a lot bigger impact on the recruitment world, just as it probably will on the accounting and finance world, than anything that's come before. But to your point, it's like, how can you leverage it and use it to your advantage until maybe someday, there's AI bots that replace everybody that does jobs. And then we're all living in this, AI utopia that people talk about.
Well,
I don't know.
well, yeah.
I don't know about that, but
Yeah, I mean, so the interesting thing too, that it's gonna take a while. I mean, I say a while, probably a couple years, but right now there's this thing of, well, why should I hire someone for whatever the number is, 100 grand, when I could pay a bot, 1,000 a month to do it?
yeah,
And okay, fine, but to your point about all these, anything with an AI in the name raising all this money, they have no pressure to do what they're doing profitably right now. But just like we saw happen with software, like that does not last forever. And these things require substantial spend from a compute perspective. And so just because something is way cheaper to hire a bot right now does not mean that will be the case 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. And so it's going to be really interesting to see, as software development and bookkeeping and recruiting and whatever get replaced for this cheaper AI, that again, there's just no way it will stay. Maybe it'll still be cheaper, but not that much cheaper. Or just supply and demand, maybe it'll be more expensive than hiring that person. And so
yeah.
I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch over, again, maybe 2 to 5 years, let's say.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those, and I'm sure Jeff would agree. It's like leverage it and learn as much as you can, because you don't want to be the person that just sticks their head in the sand and is like, wow, it's not going to do anything. I don't need to worry about it, because then you'll wake up one day and you will be out of a job and you'll be so far behind from an AI education perspective that you won't be able to catch up.
Yep.
So, I guess as you think about kind of, we're recording this podcast in mid November 2025. So if you're kind of thinking about next year, like what are some things that you're seeing, whether it's with your clients in the M&A world, because obviously you support a lot of startups and sounds like you work a lot with kind of the private equity world. Are you thinking that 2025 from a startup-y acquisition world is going to be better or worse than 2020? Is 2026 going to be better than 2025?
Yeah, it's also going to be really interesting. I mean, I think that when Trump was elected, and I will not delve into politics, but just kind of what people expected from sort of a pro business, president and administration is like, oh man, 2025 is going to be a great year economically. I think was kind of maybe not the consensus, but a lot of people felt that way. And, it's not been atrocious, but it's not been what I think a lot of people expected it to be. And I'm starting to hear now like, oh, well, but 2026 is going to be, a really strong. And I just, I do think there's a ton of capital that's been sitting on the sidelines, and there are LPs who, want a return and want their money to be invested. But I don't think some of the uncertainty that has been the reason that things haven't kind of boomed the way that some folks thought 25 would. I don't feel like that's going away. So it's going to be really interesting. I would like to think there will be more M&A activity and higher valuations, but I haven't seen anything other than hope that is telling me that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I was at an M&A conference. There was a golf tournament. It was January 20th of this year, so inauguration day, and that was a very excited group of folks at the golf tournament talking about just what you said. Like 2025 is going to be this boom year for M&A because it's been so pent up over the last few years, and that obviously just didn't happen. And so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the first few months of the year look like. I'm going to the same conference again this coming year, so I'll be very curious to see what the sentiment's like in the room there. But yeah, to your point, there is a lot of pent up demand. A lot of LPs are like, "Hey, I need the money out so I can go do something else with it." And there's also a lot of private equity groups that have deals on their books that they probably would have normally sold because they're maybe 6, 7, 8 years old. So there's capital, but there's also deals that need to be done essentially. So we shall see. I guess as you think about kind of the, and if somebody's listening to this or watching this and they're, thinking about doing an acquisition, whether it's a tech acquisition or a services company acquisition, like what are some things that you maybe wish you knew or maybe got from your co-founder to like help you make that transition or that journey from, hey, I found a business that I want to acquire and here are the reasons why I think it makes sense. And yes, we've got the finances to complete the deal. But like from a logistics and from just like a thought mindset, because like obviously you're acquiring new people, you're acquiring a business, you got, you're acquiring a culture and trying to integrate that. Like what are maybe one or two things that you wish you knew then or would give advice to things to kind of people to kind of keep top of mind as they're thinking about doing an acquisition?
I think there's so much here. I think if you had told me a few years ago that we would do 2 acquisitions in a year and that we wouldn't raise any money to do it, I would have said that's impossible. In our world, generally speaking, M&A is done with private equity, with venture capital, with institutional capital behind it. And I just didn't even think like, well, I'll use debt, and so in one case it was all kind of debt on our side, and the other case we seller financed. But either way, I thought in order to buy a business, you have to have either millions of dollars in profit or millions of dollars in investment. And we had neither of those things and got them done with, I'm not going to say they were easy, but they went fairly smoothly. And if anything, it actually made it a little bit easier that we weren't, you know what I mean? I didn't have a board to run to get those approved by. It was Joel and I, so I think that's just kind of one thing that, that there are more creative ways to do these than I think I knew in starting this business. Because again, we do a lot in that space, but it's like with a specific niche of that space.
Right.
So that's one. And then, I mean, again, this may seem like duh, but it just, I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity because, if I think about scaling for the first 3 years, And like some of the things that I would have thought about doing in 2025 and that we are thinking about doing in 2026 to grow, there's like a bunch of levers and you can pull a couple. And, doing it with M&A allows you to pull a couple at the same time, right? So adding leadership, adding geographies, adding, network capacity, adding a sales function, like a customer success function, just things that like, I know all of these things are important, but I would have, bitten them off one at a time on the gradual path to where we wanted to get to. And instead I kind of crammed, probably a couple years worth of like scaling type of activities into 9 or 10 months. And, so again, like that, like, you can grow faster with M&A than with, but it just, I don't think I kind of realized like the delta in the scale and the ability to do that. And if we execute on it right, now actually our ability to grow organically is also much greater now that we have that capacity from a leadership and a go-to-market perspective. And so it's kind of like it also like one feeds the other is another thing that maybe I just didn't just, hadn't been on this side of the acquisitions. And so I hadn't just thought of it through those lenses.
Well, and we already talked about this a little bit, but like you now have the ability to cross sell, upsell, get more revenue from one client. So you're not always trying to chase the next client. It's like, okay, cool. This accounting client that we've been working with for the last 2 years, now they're at, they've hit that $20 million mark, and they're like, we kind of need, you're getting too expensive. So it's like, let's hire a full-time person. Like, cool. Now we just flip you over to our other business unit, and we still generate revenue from that customer. It's just in a different way. And then, oh, by the way, they need an HR thing. And so it just becomes this, this circle. And then obviously if you add different services onto it.
Someone used this term the other day that, again, like this is what we were doing, but I hadn't framed it or phrased it this way. But it really, especially with the executive search side, it's monetizing churn. Like churn, right? Every business has churn. It is part of the nature of business. Sometimes it's because you didn't do a great job. Sometimes, in our case, a lot of the time, it's actually that we did well, but that is what leads them to being of the maturity that they don't need us anymore. And so that, generally we have to go find new clients to make up for that churn. And this is a way to monetize it, sort of live, so to speak. So
I like that term. I'm going to have to remember that. That's awesome. Well, cool. So I guess let's talk about the next kind of 12 months. So, if we jumped on a podcast, next November, like what are 1, 2, 3 things you're really trying to drive in the next 12 months? Or are you trying to do more acquisitions, but like, or just kind of more stabilize and grow organically? Like, what's that look like for you?
We're interested in additional M&A activity. I referenced a tax firm earlier. It would be one. We don't have any specific targets right now, other than just sort of thematically what we'd be interested in.
Yep.
But so I think the focus is getting all of this newfound capacity that we have from a leadership and go-to-market and all of that, and scaling organically. We're in the early throes of a brand refresh that will kind of come out probably in mid to late Q1, kind of integrating all the marketing collateral, because right now it's still pretty piecemeal. We have a fractional CMO for now who will be joining us part-time when that brand refresh finishes. And so really looking forward to building a more predictable, pipeline and sales engine. We have quarters that are incredible, but we never really know when they're going to come, because it's based on referrals and it's based on when needs pop up. And so I hope and expect to continue to have that sort of activity, but then, combined with again, a bit of a more predictable funnel that goes, if those referrals or if the random needs don't occur, we still have this sort of base that's going to come from these efforts.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's kind of what we're primarily focused on. And then again, we'll be opportunistic, and it wouldn't shock me if we do another deal or maybe 2 in 2026.
Very cool. So it sounds like you won't be very busy in 2026 with a brand refresh.
I'm going to take a half year off. Yeah.
That's right. You're going to go travel for 6 months and all that. So Very cool. Well, this has been an awesome kind of conversation, just learning about your journey from, kind of being a fractional and then buying a business or starting a business and then doing some acquisitions. So I really appreciate you kind of sharing that. I do want to end the episode with a 3-pack of questions that I ask every guest. So first question here is, what's a book or podcast that you would recommend that maybe you found helpful or influential?
I got two books. Favorite business book is The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz of Andreessen Horowitz. I feel like a lot of business books are, pretty stuffy, and this is just like real life examples. I think he starts every chapter with like a Biggie or Tupac quote, just very abnormal. I feel for most business books. So I really appreciate that one. And then Joel actually recently got me a book called Gambler, which is by Billy Walters. And Billy Walters was a gambler. Basically anything and everything he could, although sports betting was the biggest one. But what I like about it is that it's not only the tales of a guy who places bets and puts himself in precarious positions. He's also has become really a pretty impressive entrepreneur and philanthropist. And so you combine kind of those things with some just truly crazy stories, it makes for a pretty interesting read.
Interesting. I have not heard about that book, but I will have to check it out. Awesome. Second question here. What is your favorite thing to do outside of work?
We've got my wife and I have a 4-year-old, almost soon to be 5-year-old daughter, Haley, and a 1-year-old Maya. And so just our mornings and evenings are pretty full with activities with them. And they change so much every day. It's just a blast. So
always spend time with the kids. That's not a bad thing to do for sure. So, and then I guess maybe this dovetails into that, but maybe favorite vacation spot.
Yeah, I will have to go Tamarindo, Costa Rica.
Okay.
Or really Northwest Costa Rica overall. Not only Tamarindo is kind of a little bit more touristy, but it's great with kids. There's great beaches, there's surfing. I'm a kind of a bird watching nerd, and so Costa Rica is a fantastic place for that. Great food. And then just beautiful surroundings outside of the city as well. So we've been there 3 times.
Interesting. People have been talking about Costa Rica pretty much ever since we've moved to Austin, and we have not been yet, but I have heard of Tamarindo. So I may have to pick your brain about that off air, essentially.
Absolutely.
So awesome. Well, Bart, if people want to reach out to you, learn more about 512 Financial, learn about how you've done these acquisitions and all that, what's the best way to connect with you?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so you can certainly find me there, or my email is bart.davis@512financial.com. So either of those work, and
awesome.
Always happy to connect with folks.
Perfect. Yeah, we will put a lot of all those links in the show notes so people have easy access to that. So Bart, man, really appreciate you jumping on and being sharing your story. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, Justin, again, like I said, I appreciate it. It's always good to chat, and appreciate the time.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.